Students, welcome to section 2.2. We're going to do example 1 and we're going to get into something called, in this particular section, conditional statements. We're going to probably spend maybe a day or two, maybe longer if needed, to try and acclimate to how to do this. These are not simple things and they can get pretty confusing, but I think this first example will be fine. So let's look at the first chart that you see there. It says conditional statements. And a conditional statement is a statement that can be written in the form if P then Q. And we use the symbolism, that's how we write if P then Q. We use an arrow, P is in one color, Q is in another color, to try to color code these things for you. And I'll try and do the same thing just to make this a little bit easier on you. The goal is, and it's a lot easier when your conditional statements are an if-then statement. It's a lot easier when they're written that way. When they're not, then you have to rewrite them so that they are, so it's really obvious what the parts are. Now the if part of it, that's going to be part P. That's the if part. That's on the left. Not always written on the left, but that's how we write it using symbols. The hypothesis is the part P of a conditional statement following the word if. So you locate the word if, and the phrase that immediately comes after the word if is your hypothesis. Your conclusion is the part Q, and that's the word that comes after the word then. So the hypothesis follows if, the conclusion follows then. So I'm going to take some notes here. Hypothesis and then conclusion. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of examples, just kind of practice this. And this is really important. By phrasing a conjecture as an if-then statement, you can quickly identify its hypothesis and conclusion. So the first one's really straight up simple, okay? Now, I'm gonna underline in blue. So if you have a blue highlighter or a blue pen, let's underline the if part of this. So if a butterfly has a curved black line on its hind wing, there's your hypothesis. Anything that follows the word if is the hypothesis, and that's what they're wanting us to identify as the hypothesis. So I don't want you to have to rewrite this whole thing. I want you to underline it in blue or highlight it in blue, and then over the top write hypothesis. Okay? Now I'm going to switch colors because in your book they use the color red for Q. And Q is your conclusion, and that follows the word then. Then it is a viceroy. So they're really kind of classifying it for us. So we're going to call that our conclusion. So I'm trying to save you from doing a lot of writing here. If the color code, if you have a blue and red pen, we'll do blue is the hypothesis and we'll do red as the conclusion. Okay? All right. So, and I know I did not spell hypothesis correctly. There we go. So hypothesis is blue and we'll do conclusion in red. All right, so let me shift back to blue because we're going to do the second one. Let me read the second one to you. Letter B, and this one's a little bit trickier. A number is an integer if it is a natural number. And notice that they didn't progress it like the first one. The first one, they started with the word if, and they did the typical if-then statement. That's not what happened in the second one. They kind of moved some things around, and they put the phrasing, the if phrasing, towards the end of the sentence. Sometimes that happens. So we're going to follow a game plan. And our game plan is, if we see the word if, that phrase that immediately comes after it is our hypothesis. Okay? So do not let that deter you from our game plan. Your key word is right there. You're looking for the word if. Now, unfortunately, we don't see the word in, but because we've identified the hypothesis, then by default, the second phrasing has to be our conclusion. And so we can conclude that if our number is a natural number, then our conclusion is that number is an integer. And so that's what we're looking for. So just wanted to try and help you with that. There is another example, but it's in your book. So I don't really have room on this page to put that last one, but it is in your book if you want a little bit of extra practice. So if you have questions about that, write those down so we can talk about it just a little bit more.